Creative Babble.
Criminal Conduct Season 5 is available right now. You can binge the entire series on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. Kevin Plantin remembers when his first and only daughter was born. She was perfect.
She hit all her milestones so she could speak as well as any 2-year-old.
But at around 2 years old, his daughter slowly started losing skills that she had already learned and began to fall behind.
She was diagnosed at 2.5.
The doctors diagnosed her with regressive autism and severe dyspraxia, a motor function disorder that makes it extremely difficult for her to control her physical movements.
I don't have anyone in my family. This was our first child. I don't have any siblings or anyone in my extended family that's been touched by autism. So we just had a very open mind, Mom and me, and we just wanted to do whatever we could do to help our daughter. We just went down a path of trying everything. Things like, weighted vests, camel's milk, hyperbaric chambers, chelation, really just doing everything, leaving no stone unturned, doing everything we could to help our daughter. Anything it took, we were going to try, going to different really great psychologists and autism experts all over the East Coast.
They tried everything, but they didn't hit a breakthrough until they discovered facilitated communication.
Mom discovered facilitated communication with typing and went to this seminar that, conveniently is these groups hold them in universities on the weekend. And so the facilitator's holding out this board and I, you notice she's kind of moving it conveniently. And suddenly she's talking about President Obama and all the great things he's done. And, it's like, wow, where is this coming from? And just being like so excited about it. And this was in about 4th grade.
Suddenly, Kevin's daughter could communicate. He and his wife asked the school if they could have a facilitator support their daughter during class time.
And they stopped it cold. They said, we don't support this. We tried sending it in her backpack to school. And they said, we don't support this. This isn't legit. That was frustrating, but, we listened to the teachers.
But then COVID hit, and suddenly schools started shifting to online learning.
She'd always been in the special autism classes her whole life, and suddenly they were mainstreaming her into the, regular kid class, or whatever you want to call it. And she's typing, and the aide's holding her hand from home, and suddenly she's getting straight A's in mainstream class. And suddenly she is nominated for a PTA poetry award with a poem we thought she wrote, and it ended up getting like number 2 in the country. So at the time, I'm elated. This was a miracle. I would, obviously just as a parent would do absolutely anything to have my daughter to be able to communicate, and then to find out that she's this great writer. We have a writer on our hands here, and she's talented, and just absolute clouds parting, life-changing, what my number one wish. And so she's getting straight A's. She's nominated. She wins Hanover County. She wins Virginia poetry contest. They get to read, the regional US and all the way to the national. And she gets number 2. She gets to follow to the entire country writing a poem about autism and children being bullied with autism.
By this time, Kevin and his wife were divorced. He lived in Florida, while his ex-wife and daughter stayed in Virginia. Every weekend, Kevin made a long drive to spend time with his daughter, usually meeting up at a park.
I'm going up for my January visit to my daughter up to Virginia. And she drops her off in a parking lot at the park. And all of a sudden, Mom's not there, which is weird. And there's a police car, and he says, "Oh, you have your driver's license on you? We got a suspicious person." And all of a sudden they're telling me, can I I need to come with them. And I'm, oh, okay. Why? What's going on? I'm just like, what? I'm trying to search my mind as to what possibly reason would they be detaining me? I'd never been arrested in my life. The sergeant says to me, shows me a letter, because we're pen pals. We were writing back and forth when I was in Florida, emailing the letters, and I would reply back. And she's doing all this fantastic typing. And she's saying, Dad, come back. Don't move. Why did you move? I miss you, and all these things. And I'm feeling like a real jerk for moving, And he says, did your daughter write this? And I said, yeah. He said, you think she can write like this? And so there was a complaint, and they say it was right in the module in 7th grade where they were talking about sex ed. And within, I think, a few days of that, is she made these, the facilitator typed that I had raped her, I had sodomized her since she was 2.
On January 9th, 2021, Kevin Plantin was arrested and was taken to jail. Sergeant Payne, the arresting officer, charged Plantin with 2 counts of rape and 2 counts of sodomy. Their only evidence? A letter, supposedly written by his intellectually disabled daughter via facilitated communication.
Just real horrible stuff. I've actually never read exactly, but that was the typing. And I said, look, man, I said to the cop, like, give me a polygraph. Like, I don't know what you want to hear from me or what, but all I know is I'm innocent. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know if, it crosses your mind, is somebody else hurting her? And within like a couple hours, he's done with me, and I'm going and I'm getting processed, and I'm going to county jail in Hanover. And I'm thinking this will be a 2-day thing or a 2-hour thing or and then eventually it's, this is going to be 2 weeks, or then I'll be out, or I'll get bond.
But this ordeal wasn't resolved in days or weeks. Kevin Plantin sat in a jail for 10 months, accused of raping his intellectually disabled daughter. I wasn't planning on making a 3rd installment to my Telepathy Tapes series. After all, I already talked about the multiple false allegations made as a result of facilitated communication. But listing out cases is nothing like hearing directly from a parent who has been falsely accused. Kevin Plantin's story is devastating. He's a broken man. Not only did he lose his daughter, he lost his career, and he lost almost a year of his life. All at the hands of pseudoscience. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else.
Shopping is hard, right? But there's a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And she sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what I love and send back the rest. It's so easy. Personal styling for everyone. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Thank You for Your Interest is a show where people just like you and me come on and share their professional rejection stories. Think of it as part therapy, part venting to your best friend.
The stories you're going to hear are heartbreaking, hilarious, hellish, sometimes a combination of all three.
I tell them that I'm upset about this. And that was when my boss said, well, you've changed since you've had a baby.
If you think you have a story to share, visit our website at tyfyipod.com to learn how you can be a guest on the show.
That's tyfyipod.com. Thank you for your interest.
In part 2 of my coverage of the Telepathy Tapes podcast, I discussed a case involving a facilitator named Janyce Boynton. In the early 1990s, Janyce Boynton was a facilitator for a non-speaking high school girl named Betsy. During their session, Betsy appeared to describe being sexually abused by her parents. This led to both Betsy and her brother being removed from their home. After my episode came out, Janyce Boynton reached out to me.
Like in the case that I was involved with, because it was also a false allegation of abuse, but only I was the facilitator.
Looking back now, Janyce Boynton realized that her involvement with facilitated communication led to the irreparable damage for the family being accused. But back then, she didn't realize that she unintentionally contributed to the allegations.
And this was in 1991, 92. The double-blind testing results were just starting to come out. It wasn't like now where there's a body of evidence that shows, like in every single, I rarely say 100% about anything,
right.
But 100% of the reliably controlled testing show that the facilitators are controlling the messages 100% of the time.
Yeah,
That's, it's like, it's one of those things that it has been proven that it doesn't work.
Right. It's like, the only phenomenon is not the telepathy or the facilitated communication. The phenomenon is that it looks like magic and you could even fool yourself.
But again, she didn't know any better. The courts were asking her to prove the validity of the testing, but all her training ever taught her was not to participate in any independent tests.
The FC workshops tell you not to test, and they tell you they're out to get you, they're jealous somehow that we've figured out how to work with these children and he hasn't, and that kind of mentality, that testing is going to be really aggressive toward your student. It's not going to be fair. It's going to be biased. There was this disconnect between what I was being told in the FC workshops and what I experienced personally.
Right.
I had a real struggle in my head. You're not supposed to test it. But this family is facing these really serious charges. And part of that is because I was one of the facilitators. The other struggle I was having was I'm a mandatory reporter. The allegations weren't just coming out when the person was facilitating with me. They were coming out also with the other facilitator. And so, like, what do you do? We kind of struggled behind the scenes. Like, what do we do with this information? Because if this was a typically speaking person, we would move forward with calling the Department of Human Services. But this is through facilitated communication. None of us thought to test FC. We were like convinced that this was something new that was happening. We didn't know what it was necessarily, but we weren't doubting the communications. We were giving her and facilitated communication the benefit of the doubt. So what if it was true? What if she really was being abused at home and we didn't move forward with it? So there's these conundrums that people don't really think about.
In your case, how did it work? Because obviously you're having sessions with her, multiple sessions. This probably didn't happen in the first session. You probably built some sort of relationship with your patient. And then, like, describe to me that setting of, like, what was she spelling? And did it take you by surprise? Because obviously you're not trying to put this thought in her head, but it came out, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like an author. I kind of liken it to an author that's creating dialogue and a scene for their student. Mm-hmm. But you're also reacting to your own thoughts and the environment around you. So the guidelines tell you to look for unusual turns of phrase or information that you wouldn't have, like the facilitator wouldn't have said, that kind of thing. So you're kind of looking to validate whether the communications are true or not. So swear words or, whatever, surprising information. It could be anything, but in this case, I don't know who started getting the false allegations of abuse first. The other facilitator or me, we talked. So people share information. That's sometimes people say to test it, you have two different facilitators, but that's terrible because the facilitators share information.
Right. And
So
you're confirming it.
yeah. So you confirm, we were confirming each other, and we were talking, what if something's happening at home? As soon as that seed is planted in your head, in my case, she all of a sudden started hitting me. And so I took that, a lot of the FC workshop is, it's all about trust, right? You have to trust the process. The student has to trust you. So in my head, I was thinking, well, maybe she's acting out. It's more likely she didn't want me in her space, and she was tired of me holding the letterboard so she could poke at it. It's more likely that, but that's not where my mind went. My mind went, she broke that trust. Why did she hit me? She must be acting out. Something's happening at home.
Did she actually ever spell that? Or was that just kind of, you knew something was wrong?
It was sexual assault.
Oh, really? Yeah. Like she would spell it like letter by letter?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That must have been like really intense, right? Because you don't, you're dealing with this child, right? And I can't even imagine.
Ultimately, the court decided that they needed to test if this young girl was really the author of the allegations or if it came from Janyce Boynton, her facilitator. You can actually watch the double-blind test in the Frontline documentary.
When Betsy saw a cup, she didn't type cup, she typed hat, what the facilitator saw.
Here we go. Now take a look at this one. I want you to tell me what you see, okay?
When Betsy was shown a picture of a dog, she didn't type dog, but sneakers.
After double-blind tests confirmed that Betsy, the young girl, wasn't the one making the accusations, Janyce stepped back and abandoned facilitated communication altogether. In fact, today she has become one of its most outspoken opponents.
So at first it was more guilt, how do I fix something that I broke in the past? Like I hurt that family. Those are my actions. I also hurt myself in my career by my actions, by not researching this well enough. So a lot of my early work was out of guilt, and now I just think it's wrong.
I mean, you did all the right things, and you're so like mature about it, and like the way your approach is, But there are some facilitators who, to me, it sounds like they already have a conclusion, and they're going to go for that conclusion. And the training too seems like it's oriented to find signs. And if you're already thinking, oh, okay, hitting could be a sign of distress, right? Like you're just confirming a lot of pre-existing beliefs.
Well, they also tell you in the workshops that this communication is new to the person, and it's probably the first time that they've been able to express themselves and to expect disclosures.
Yeah.
Because this might have happened to them 5 or 10 years ago, but now this is the first time that they've been able to tell you. Yeah. So I think the facilitators are primed, or at least they were back when I was using FC, to expect this kind of communication. So you're gonna find it, because it's all. I think the conversations are all just happening in the facilitators' heads.
But I guess going back to 1991 or 92 when this happened to you, would it have been a lot easier if you would have just refused the double-blind test? I mean, for your career, you know what I mean? Like, because that must have been devastating.
Yeah. Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, no, it was terrible.
When we return, we're going to look at the origins of facilitated communication, and we're also going to talk about the major U.S. university that continues to support it.
I'm no tech genius, but I know if I want my business to crush it, I need a website now. Thankfully, Bluehost makes it easy. I customized, optimized, and monetized everything exactly how I wanted with AI. Within minutes, my site was up. I couldn't believe it. Plus, Bluehost keeps me protected 24/7. No more worrying about hackers. I just relax and focus on my customers. So, whatever your hustle may be, secure your online presence in 2025 with Bluehost. Head to Bluehost.com to start now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
ING.
Facilitated communication has been repeatedly proven to be unreliable, with clear evidence showing that the facilitator, not the person being helped, is the one controlling the messages. Experts agree that facilitated communication has no scientific validity. If facilitated communication is such an embarrassment for the scientific community, then who is giving this practice legitimacy? While doing research for this series, I kept running into the same place over and over again: Syracuse University.
Syracuse University is ground zero for facilitated communications.
Despite the overwhelming evidence, Syracuse University is still teaching and sharing information about facilitated communication through what they call the Center of Disability and Inclusion. So how did this respected university get tangled up promoting pseudoscience? It all started with Professor Douglas Bicklin of Syracuse University.
They had been using facilitated communication in Australia for about 8 years before Bicklin brought it to the United States, and it was actually debunked.
But Professor Bicklin and Syracuse University promoted it anyway. Bicklin believed that facilitated communication was a game changer in the field of autism.
Tonight on Frontline, Prisoners of Silence.
This is a clip of Professor Bicklin from the groundbreaking Frontline documentary that exposed the flaws of facilitated communication.
I knew that I had seen something terribly important. Here was a means of expression for people who lacked expression. Here was a way that you could find out what people were feeling and what they were thinking.
But the Prisoners of Silence documentary told a different story. The documentary used double-blind tests to show that facilitated communication just doesn't work. It proved that the facilitator was unknowingly moving the person's arm to create responses based on what the facilitator knew.
Caused a lot of angst, I think, with the people in Syracuse University. They kind of went underground for a while. They changed the name of the Facilitated Communication Institute.
But despite the controversy, Syracuse University continues to legitimize facilitated communication, even today.
And then they've sort of come back. It's never gone away from Syracuse. They've always promoted it. They know the problems with FC. They know the problems of queuing and authorship, but they just don't bother to test it.
But this is a respected university giving facilitated communication credibility, right?
Yeah.
And has the university ever addressed this, to your knowledge?
They haven't responded to any of the in any meaningful way to the criticisms. What's interesting is that the speech language department at Syracuse University is against facilitated communication. And at one time they shared a building, shared a department with the people that were promoting FC, and the speech department split off from that department because of facilitated communication. They had a statement right on their homepage of the speech department that said, "We don't support FC or supported typing," or so that says quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I see it here. It's on the Arts and Sciences Syracuse.edu. It says communication science and disorder statement on facilitated communication. We affirm, all individuals have the right to communicate, and they support, evidence-based practices, and they support ASHA's position on facilitated communication. So they were clearly trying to separate themselves from I guess they're calling themselves the Disability Inclusion Center, right?
Right. It's changed names, rebranded several times over the years.
So, what happened with Kevin Plantin, who we heard from at the top of the episode? A grand jury ultimately indicted him on 2 of the 4 original charges. 1 count for sodomy and 1 count for rape. Luckily, Kevin had friends on the outside who stood by him, like his friend Brad.
He was blown away because he's like, Kevin, all these cases are just like yours, and it's been happening since the 90s. We suddenly had articles that I'm being mailed to in jail, and print. Brad's printing things out, and he's researching this, and I'm reading about this, and I'm like, well, the good news is I'm not alone. And we know exactly what this is. In the meantime, I'm talking to my lawyer saying, okay, I'm reading all about these double-blind tests. That's all we got to do. He's like, well, what if the test goes the wrong way? He was like afraid to do the test. I'm like, dude, do the test. I'm facing 4 mandatory life sentences here. I'm like, we're doing the test. I'm innocent.
But Kevin's attorney wasn't so sure.
The judge in Hanover had been my family court judge for 10 years at that point. So this guy knew me really well. I knew him really well. And
Kevin Plantin's new attorney made the case that facilitated communication is bogus and unreliable evidence. And he had all the studies to back it up.
Maybe the judge is going to listen.
But the argument fell flat. The family court judge was a believer.
And he said, I've been familiar with FC since 1965, and it hadn't really been developed until the 90s.
It seemed like logic and reason was not enough of a defense. It was Kevin's daughter, whose guided words swayed the court.
She testified against me before I was indicted.
Using facilitated communication, of course.
And that's the last time I saw her. That was 4 years ago, going on 4.5 years ago. And just used FC, and the judge sat, the lower court judge sat there in hook, line, and sinker. That was it. Case closed for him. So he believed this, and he thought it was real. And I'm still not getting bond. And then it's like, okay, see you in 3 months. So it turned into a 10-month ordeal.
My audience is just going to be shocked because I did tell them cases like that, but to hear it from you, it hits differently, right? Because you are a real person. You're telling your story. And this, you never expected that day in the park to turn out the way it did. And now, and I think about you being in jail for 10 months, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 months. People in jails and in prison don't take kindly to people accused of molestation, especially somebody with disability. How was your experience in jail?
Yeah. So my life became 2 things and this was a privately run jail, which a lot of people don't even know about. That's a whole nother podcast, right?
Can of worms.
It was tough. Half my battle was just surviving jail day to day, and then half my battle was my case. I was naive. I thought, well, I've never been convicted of anything. I'm innocent. I'm fine here. I'm safe. No one's going to mess with me, right? But of course, they also can look you up and see what your charges are. And just, kind of like in society, you are what your job is in society, right? Like, what do you do for a living? I'm this, I'm that. Well, in jail, your kind of identity is your charges.
Kevin Plantin says that he spent most of his time in jail in solitary confinement.
So once I realized, okay, they're going to put you in the hole, but at least you get your own cell, that's what I did. I lost 66 pounds, and then just that's your body. And then, what happens to your mind is just you become very strong mentally. But it takes a toll on you, I'm still dealing with that. And then, of course, because it's COVID, you're locked in your cell 23 plus 1 for 10 months. you're not even getting out. And then when you're getting out by yourself because of COVID.
It's very lonely, very lonely. And
I mean, you really are, you're a man in the box. I mean, my mom passed away when I was in jail. Of course, I couldn't go to her funeral.
Oh.
So my dad lost his wife of 60 years, and he's got me in jail facing life charges.
But there was one thing that kept him fighting.
I knew my daughter loved me. I knew I was innocent, and that's what kept me going.
So Kevin fired his attorney and hired a new one who had experience fighting facilitated communication in court.
I talked to him and he said, Kevin, this is what's going to happen. We're going to explain the double-blind test. We're going to request the double-blind test. And what always happens in these cases is the parent that believes in it goes home and tries to conduct a test, and they realize it doesn't work. It's not real. And then they refuse the test, and then they're going to drop your charges. And within 2 months, that's exactly what happened. Mom refused to do the test. The prosecutor told her, if you're not going to do the test, I'm going to drop the charges. And, about a week before Thanksgiving, they dropped the charges. And I was home after 10 months.
On top of the fact that the mom refused to conduct a double-blind test, her attorney offered this deal. The mom would drop the sexual abuse charges if Kevin gave up his parental rights and never see his daughter again. Let's just say the judge didn't take kindly to this deal.
It didn't end there because that was in 2021, and now we're starting 2025, and I still haven't saw my daughter because this judge in the lower court and family court still believes in FC.
So you have basically a restraining order against you that you can't prevents you from seeing your daughter.
Yeah.
And what's the next step for you?
Yeah, I mean, we tried. Dr. Shane on his own, time and, volunteered to come down and testify for me in family court to try to communicate with this judge what we already had done in the criminal process.
Dr. Howard Shane was a leading autism expert at Children's Hospital in Boston. He believes in using occupational therapy to help people communicate on their own through tools like AAC instead of using facilitated communication, which has been proven unreliable.
And the judge refused and extended the restraining order last year for 2 more years. So he won't even listen to Dr. Shane. He won't even entertain the thought. It's now at the point where mom has pulled my daughter out of public school and is homeschooling her with FC, and found a psychologist that testified in court last year that she believes that she didn't say my daughter can communicate in court at the hearing to remove the restraining order. She said, I believe in FC. I tested it.
I think that these judges need to be held accountable too in terms of falling into this junk science. To me, this is no different than bringing a psychic, into the courtroom and accepting that as evidence, right? But no one should be convicted of charges based solely on facilitated communication because it's just...
and that's 100% of what they had, but it didn't really seem to matter in Hanover.
By now, if you're not convinced that facilitated communication is bogus, well, then I don't know what to tell you. It's become more of a belief than actual science. So I reached out to Syracuse University for a comment. I wrote to them and I said, it has come to my attention that Syracuse University continues to provide training and share information on facilitated communication through the Center of Disability and Inclusion. As you may know, extensive evidence has shown that facilitated communication is unreliable, with facilitators controlling the messages rather than the individual with disabilities. Can you please clarify the university's current stance on facilitated communication and explain why these initiatives are still being promoted? Additionally, I noticed that web pages related to facilitated communication have recently been taken down from the university's website. Can you provide details on why these pages were removed and whether this reflects a shift in the university's position on the issue? They responded, the Center on Disability and Inclusion remains steadfast in its commitment to disability-related research that results in the creation and implementation of initiatives focused on promoting the inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of school and society, locally, nationally, globally. This includes, for example, our work assisting K-12 schools to create more inclusive learning environments and programs, and our nationally recognized Inclusive U program, which brings together students of all ages with intellectual and developmental disabilities who want to experience college in a fully inclusive setting at Syracuse University. While we continue our work in these areas and others, the center will no longer have a dedicated unit focusing on typing to communicate. That's another phrase for facilitated communication, by the way. Their email goes on to say, we will, however, continue to advance our work that ensures all people have access to communication that is heard, acknowledged, accepted, and valued. So there you have it. Syracuse University sounds like they are abandoning facilitated communication. There was so much that I just couldn't include in this episode, so I will be releasing my full-length conversation with Janyce Boynton on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. It's seriously fascinating. So if you're interested, we dive in deep on all these topics at length. Go check it out. I'll have a link in the show notes. Next time on Pretend, we are going to switch things up. You're about to meet a group of women who joined forces to expose a man that they believe repeatedly deceived and manipulated them for financial gain. And they've made it their mission to intercept his next relationships.
We need a wall of whiteboard to connect all the dots.
We need a murder board.
Who knew who and all that.
It's called Operation Cockblock.
Wow. But during that Operation Cockblock, in a month and a half, it was 20 to 25 women that he was working at one time, and had several, it was just every day we were getting another ping from somebody else. It's over 100 women by now. It just kept snowballing and snowballing and snowballing, and it's just has never stopped.
That's next time on Pretend.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
Creative